Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen. I'm joined by my podcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw. Played for many years with the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings, and knows all the ins and outs of playing new formats and tournament formats. And we're going to get his comments on yesterday. To no one's surprise, the league confirmed that indeed we're going to have, Tom, a 24-team playoff format. It's not that there's going to be 24 teams in the playoffs, although it's going to feel that way.
Yep.
Because there's going to be a first-round play-in round that, and I don't think it's been decided for sure that it'll be best of 5. I think some people think it should be best of 7, but that you're not going to love no matter what they put up. So let's just sort of accept it and move on. But I think what's interesting about this is 2 teams did vote against it. Not that they didn't want to play; they do want to play.
Yep.
They didn't want to do this format, and the Tampa Bay Lightning is one of the teams that didn't want to play. And basically, what they didn't like is that there's going to be a meaningful first round, sort of a half step for a lot of teams to play while they're going to be playing sort of exhibition games. And they felt like they may not be ready because look what happened to them last year when they were well ahead, and then Columbus was battling with important games down the stretch, and then when they played in a playoff series, Columbus took them apart. So your thoughts on the 24 team?
You're right. I mean, listen, you can always find a way to criticize it and say you should have done, you tweak it this way or tweak it that way. But I think it's going to be really exciting. I think the fact that they're going to jump in and play right away. I anticipate that the hockey may not be very good right away. And when I say good, the team player, people are going to be making mistakes or in the wrong spot defensively. But that also means good hockey or fun hockey, anyways, right? So it's not the coaches. Not the way the coaches are going to want it, but I think when those mistakes happen, now you don't have that button-down defense as much, especially early. You have more run-and-gun hockey. And like we talked, I think it was last time we were talking to, that's why I think the teams, when I look at the more talented teams, I think they're going to have the best chance in this playoff format. But interesting with Tampa, why they would vote against it, though, too. I mean, that mentality kind of bothers me. Like, if I'm Tampa Bay, I'm saying, listen, we are one of the top teams in the National Hockey League. It doesn't matter what the system is. We need to go play, or I don't know how we do this playoffs. We need to play. We need to be ready. Like, don't be finding excuses already saying, this is not fair to us. You should be thinking, okay, let's get ready to play. This is what it is, and get playing. And I know if you're going to have a long run in the playoffs, to play fewer games early, yes, you're not going to be maybe as sharp, but you're also going to have fewer injuries. You're not going to be as tired either. So I like it a lot. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I'm with you on the swagger aspect of athletics. I like the teams that say, how do you want to play?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. You want to play physical? All right. You want to play a skill game? We'll do that. Whatever, however you want to play, we're willing to play that way. The Bruins are like that.
Yep.
You want to.
Yeah, the Islanders were like that when we played them in the early '80s when they win their cup. Absolutely, yep.
Yeah, you want to trade goals? All right, we'll do that. You want to have a goaltending battle? Yeah, we'll do that too. You want to have a physical battle? Yeah, we're right there. So, yeah, my hope is, and because I'm with you, we've talked about this before, that the offense will be ahead of the defense because it takes a little time to find the cohesiveness to play great defense. And I think because of that, there'll be defensive mistakes. And I miss mistakes. What? Like, people think that the 80s was about offensive skill, and that's why there was so much goal scoring. It wasn't. It was about mistakes.
Yeah.
Because, today's athlete, and now correct me if I'm wrong on this, but this is my read on it. Today's athlete has been going and being taught defense since he was 5 or 6 years old. Like, they all go, and that's all anybody talks about, even at the youth level, is defense. We're preventing goals.
But I'm gonna argue with you there. I shouldn't say I'm gonna argue with you. You're correct in that statement so far. But like I watch NHL games sometimes now, and some of and I guess I'm watching the defensemen probably more. And again, we were not perfect when we played back then either, but it seems like, there's far more mistakes, like defensemen, running to a corner when they don't have to instead of staying in front of the net, chasing a guy behind the net when they don't have to instead of staying in front of the net. I just feel like the defensive play predicted by the defenseman is, and maybe it's because they're just so skilled, they feel like they can get away with it. I wasn't actually, one of the best things about me was that I wasn't a great skater, so I didn't skate out of position. I had to really concentrate on staying in my position. So,
I'm going to get to the skating aspect, but one point I would make with regard to yours is a lot of that. What I'm kind of talking about is the defensive play by the forwards. Like there was very little back pressure that I recall anyway.
That's true.
You got someone on your tailpipe now when you're, charging down the ice with the puck. You got somebody, just back pressure.
Yeah.
You still feel like you've got to make a play quickly because the guy from behind. If you slow up, he's going to be on you.
Well, that's very true. Yeah.
And I
remember they used to talk about Wayne Gretzky. Sorry, Kevin, interrupted, but they used to talk about Wayne Gretzky when you were carrying the puck out of your zone. They would always say when you're playing against him, be careful because he's going to come and hound you from behind. Like, there was a rarity that a player would do that. Yeah.
No. And so I think it's more today. There's more 5-man defense than there was in the 80s.
That's true.
But the second aspect, and I think this is important as well, the skill level of the modern defenseman is so great compared to what it was in the 80s. Like you said, if you had any skating and deficiency, and I don't want to say people they were bad skaters because by every day skating assessment they were fine skaters, but compared to the NHL, some of your weaker skaters played defense.
Yep.
And they survived on great positioning and everything else. And it seems like every team back in the 80s had a guy that you could beat wide.
Yep.
How often do we see people get beat wide now?
Yeah.
It's almost never happens. But Mike Bossy made a living on roaring around guys on the outside. Snap shot. And you just don't see that anymore. So the skill level of the defenseman is so high now that it's not like the guys in the 80s were more skilled than today's guys. It's just they just have less room and
the rules are different too. More hooking and holding was allowed, and slashing and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, though by that argument, today's athletes should score more than that because there was a lot in the 80s. Guys were getting slashed, and then especially into the 90s. By the time you got in the 90s, I just interviewed a guy who wrote a book on that 1992, 93 season. And to me, that was sort of the end of the 80s. And by that, I mean, that was the last time. That was the year Mario came back from cancer. And there was Teemu Selanne had 1 billion goals as a rookie. McGillney was tearing it up. And then it's like everybody came back the next season, and all of a sudden we were talking about neutral zone traps and preventing scoring chances. And instead of running to the TV set after a goal as a reporter and writing down what a great play the forward did, we were trying to assess blame. Who made the mistake?
Very sure.
Now, people ask me, well, then it was you guys. Well, no, it wasn't, because we were doing that because coaches were doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Coaches would come after the game starting in the 90s, and instead of talking about what a great play the forward would think, they'd talk about where the breakdown was. What happened.
That's interesting the way you say that, because you know what the reality is, whether it was the 70s, 80s, 90s, or whatever, the reality is if the defensive team plays a perfect game, they will never get scored on. So like anytime there is a goal scored, it's because a mistake has been made. They've done something that shouldn't happen. That goes, to me, that's, like I said, 70s, 80s, 90s, whenever. But now you're right. All of a sudden it became focus, right? Like we didn't dwell on. That's interesting. I'm thinking coming back to the bench after a goal got scored on us. the coach may come over and say something, you made a terrible mistake, or if the mistake you made, you've done it over and over. But majority of the time, it's like, okay, we knew what we did wrong. Let's get ready for the next shift. We didn't dwell on the shift that just happened. We got ready for the next one. But that is interesting. It's very, very accurate, though, that all of a sudden that shift of change, right? The blame game, like what did somebody do wrong instead of what did somebody do right?
Oh yeah, no, and for sure. I remember distinctly that and what I say is, remember the great goal Guy Lafleur scored streaking down the right wing against Gilbert, the Bruins goalie. What a great goal that was. Yeah. Today, if that happened and you were writing it as a national reporter, you would talk about what a bad goal that was for the goalie to give up.
Yeah.
Instead of it being a great shot and everything else, it would have been like, what was he doing? He was awkward. He was out of position. Oh. He wasn't set. He didn't reset. All of that.
Yeah.
So anyway, that just gets us back to, what I'm hoping for is we kind of have that kind of 1980s, like, I don't want to see a complete breakdown of structure, but I wouldn't mind it being a little scrambly.
Yeah, and I think early, like in those early rounds, those the play-in rounds, I think you're definitely going to see that. Once they play flying up and down the ice, right? So I'm looking forward to that. It'll be good.
Well, I'm already predicting that. So the Oilers have the Blackhawks, right?
Yeah. Okay. Oilers, Blackhawks. Yep.
And the Penguins have Montreal, right?
Yeah.
I'm predicting, because those are the fan bases I think that are the most worried that you got to deal with Carey Price if you're Edmonton. And really, the problem people are having is, and I think this is one of the issues that the league had. In my estimation, if you were trying to be fair to the bubble teams, I thought if you had 20 spots, it wasn't enough. I thought there were more than 20 teams that deserved a shot to get into the playoffs.
Right.
But 24 is too many. Like 22 was the right answer, but you can't play with 22. Right. It doesn't work.
Why do you think 24 is too many?
Because Montreal and this is just my opinion.
Right.
Montreal and Chicago didn't deserve the shot they're getting.
Yeah.
They're the other teams. You could make a case that they might have gotten back in.
I see your point. So like Montreal wasn't like making a run at the end of the season to possibly.
No, I didn't see them as a bubble team. I didn't see the Blackhawks. Now maybe the Blackhawks did. Yeah. Now, but that's just how I saw it.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Like I look at here watching the Rangers all the time. I talked about it before. I really felt like they were making a run for the playoffs. Yep.
Yeah, they were a legitimate bubble team. The Florida Panthers are a legitimate bubble team. Yep. The Coyotes, in my mind, even though they were 4 points out, they had been in first place in that division for a while. The only reason they fell was because, in my mind, because their goaltending was injured. Right. So, like, those were teams that I think deserved a shot to try to get in the playoffs. But so we had to go a little bit deeper than we wanted because, you got to make the matrix work. Yeah. 24 teams worked out nicely.
Yeah.
So it worked that way. So that brings us back to, why the fan bases in Edmonton and Pittsburgh are a little miffed at this because, now they've got to go down and play someone that, has a chance to beat them. And so, because I believe that whatever that will infuriate the most fans will occur, I think that one of those teams, the Oilers and the Penguins, is going to get knocked off and the fan bases are going to go crazy.
Yeah. And how are we feeling then about, like, I'm not sure how I feel totally about the top four teams. I know they need to play games. You don't want them sitting around not playing and then all of a sudden starting the playoffs.
Right.
But they're going to reset based on those games played. So each going to play 3 games. And now they're based on those games are now going to be kind of reseeded in the top 4. Again, that's one of those things it's going to happen where there's going to be some matchup that happens that is different than what it would have been had they just left them alone in their records where they are. And then they're going to lose. Somebody's going to lose, and then they're going to say the same thing, right? It's going to be, we got screwed.
Well, or you're going to have somebody that likes one matchup better than the other, and so he's going to use some younger players in his lineup, and the coach is, and we're going to have just because he thinks the matchup is more favorable.
But he won't. That coach isn't going to know what the matchup is going to be because he just knows who's going to win those other series.
No, he doesn't. But everybody does their own permutations.
But aren't they those teams that play the best of 5 series? They're going to be reseeded based on where they were in the standings.
That
have to be, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, they would have to be.
Yeah.
So you still wouldn't know for sure.
No, you wouldn't. But anyway, I mean, maybe you just say to yourself, yeah. So you think everyone will just?
Yeah, to me, I'm going to think, well, if I'm one of those top 4 teams, the few things that I need to have happen, I need to get the most out of those 3 games that they're going to play, right? I need to, I need to get my team ready for the next round. So in those 3 games we're playing, I'm playing all out. Like I want my team ready. I want everybody to get in the game. I want my power play going. I want my penalty kill going. That's my goal. Obviously, I want to win because I want to be the highest seed possible. But who's to say that being the highest seed possible is the best way to go? I mean, you may face some hot team that you wouldn't have faced otherwise. So to me, it's like getting my team ready to play their best hockey when the actual playoffs really start.
Now that I hear you articulate that, I think you're absolutely right. No time for head games.
Yeah.
Let's just ready the team, get the boys ready.
Yeah.
And play. That makes perfect sense when I think about it.
So let's get into a little prediction hat going here.
Sure.
So in the East, we've got Pittsburgh against Montreal, Hurricanes against the Rangers, Islanders against the Panthers, and Maple Leafs against the Blue Jackets. Let's start with the Penguins and Canadiens. Who are you taking?
I'll take the Penguins in that. I know that there's a lot of fear over Carey Price, but the Penguins have been a real good team all season. I like, what's happened with that team. They've got 2, quality young goalies. They've got plenty of firepower. There's a lot more depth there than we thought there was going to be. The addition of Marino this season has really helped the defense quite a bit.
And Gensel that was hurt.
Pardon me?
Gensel was hurt, right? So he should be back.
Yeah, he is going to be back. Yeah.
Right. So that's like having a pretty good player, top 6.
Well, that for sure. And they've added Zucker too, obviously at the trade deadline. Now all of a sudden, like that historically, that franchise has had incredible success. And they've had that success when I always felt they were 1 forward short. Like it always felt like the Penguins were 1 forward short because hardly anybody gets 2 great centers, but they had 2 great centers. So it always felt like they needed 4 wingers to play with those, and it always felt like they had 3. Now all of a sudden they've got Zucker added that mix, and so I like their chances.
All right, well, I'm going to go with Montreal then. I just think Carey Price is going to be so much of a difference. I think he's going to have a training camp. Yes, maybe a little bit of rust there, but he's going to have a training camp for 3 weeks to get himself going. He's a great athlete. Shea Weber will be healthy. I love him as a player. He's a great leader. And at one point during the season with Montreal, they were really coming on and playing well, and they obviously faded away. But I think that's a scrappy team. It's one of those things that if they can win 1 game early, if Carey Price can win 1 game early, they're going to feel confident too. So I'll go with Montreal just to be different than you.
Yeah, well, and there's been a lot of talk about Carey Price. There seemed to be the fear of Price.
How about Carolina Hurricanes against the New York Rangers?
Yeah. Well, I'll take Carolina on this. I think this is a toss-up series, coming in. But I'll take Carolina because I know you're going to take the Rangers on that. And I don't blame you. I mean, I love how the Rangers have looked down the stretch. I really like the energy of their new defense, even though their new defense still has some holdovers. But, Adam Fox has, in my mind, made a huge difference there. And D'Angelo obviously gives that team such a big offensive spark. And
goaltending is incredible. Like they got 3 goaltenders, really. I know Henrik is getting older, but maybe it's helped him to have this time off. But that great goaltending. I think another defenseman there, Trouba. I don't think Trouba gets enough credit the way he plays. So you're going to go with Carolina. I've got New York Rangers.
Yeah, and Carolina. They're still as strong as they were last season, and we know how far they went last season. So There's a lot to like about the team. Like, I think you got to give the goaltending edge to the Rangers, but you say that, but somehow they keep finding ways, the goaltenders to get the job done. Like their goaltending is not great, but it's been adequate.
Yeah, definitely. See, there's how intelligent some of our viewers are. Susan Brooks tells us Chris Kreider, he's going to be healthy too. So he was, he was banged up a little bit, so he'll be back at it. So, all right. So you've got the Hurricanes. I've got the Rangers, Islanders, and the Panthers.
Yeah. That's an interesting series as well. Now, this is going to surprise you a little bit because you're going to think I'm going to take the Islanders.
What?
Yeah. Well,
Barry Trotz watching this show. Hopefully he doesn't see this.
Yeah. But, there's always upsets. And I wonder if Bobrovsky will step up big here because there's going to be some teams that surprise us. And I look for the Panthers to be that surprise team.
You know what? I know you say surprise, and you're right in saying surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise that they win, though, right? Bobrovsky should be better than he has played. So I like that. I cannot, with the Rangers, I cannot cheer for the Islanders. And so I agree with you on that. But we're both going with the Panthers. So, all right. And now we got the Maple Leafs and the Blue Jackets. Ooh, two totally different teams here.
Yeah. I'm going to go with the Blue Jackets on this. Just what Tortorella has been, I think he's made for that team. I think that team responds well to what he does. Everybody's healthy, and people are talking about Seth Jones, but Cam Atkinson is also healthy, and I think that's important. I think the only guy, not counting Dubinsky because they had really sort of written him off for the entire season because of his hand injury, but Josh Anderson is really the only guy that won't be back, and they really haven't been healthy all year and have hung in there. And they'll be hard to play against. That Maple Leafs offense, I love it, but they still got the same problem they've had, since the rebuild started, which is they're not good enough defensively.
Yeah, they're not. They just haven't made a real commitment, I think, to playing well defensively. But I think the one thing the Leafs have though in their favor is Anderson, the goaltender. I think he can really play well. And I just like their talent, so I'm going to have to go with the Toronto Maple Leafs. But I'm going to like that series. That's two totally different teams. Who's going to win that mental battle? Who's going to stick with their game the most? So I like it. All right, out west, we've got Oilers and Blackhawks, Predators and Coyotes, Canucks and Wild, and the Flames and the Jets. So we'll start with the Oilers and the Blackhawks. Who we got?
I'm rooting for the Oilers, but I'm gonna pick the Blackhawks because I think there's gonna be one episode. I really think the league needs the Oilers in the playoffs. Wow. I think if they can get by this first round, and with Connor McDavid, and we're thinking this is going to be an offensive show. Like I think we could see some numbers that were like 1980s numbers. Like I wouldn't be shocked if the Oilers are going to win this. They're gonna come out of it with
7.
Yeah. And Connor McDavid's going to end up with just a ton of points, and Draisaitl as well. They've got some depth of scoring now. Nugent Hopkins is a really good player. He's gotten better with age. He's a solid two-way player, but he can create numbers. The Anthony Ciu trade, that's either going to be a boom or a bust. Like he's either going to be unbelievable, or you're going to look at him and go, what in the world were they thinking when they got him? Because he's a breakaway or two in every game he plays. He's so fast. So it's going to be interesting. But I really, for the sake of the league, I'd like to see the Oilers advance. I just think that the league needs it. But I don't know. I'm just going to take a hunch on this. And if Patrick Kane and Taves and that group, maybe this is a time for them to show that they're not dead yet.
Well, I see. If I was a Chicago defenseman right now, I'd be having nightmares because I've been seeing Connor McDavid coming at me at 100 miles an hour. He's been sitting around rested, no injuries whatsoever. So he's going to be flying up and down the ice, and Chicago's just not going to be on top of their defensive game yet. And that's the worst team and worst player, I think, to play against if you're not ready to play defensively with Connor McDavid. So I'm taking the Oilers, and I agree with it, though. I think it's going to be those 7-5, 8-7 games, but I'm going to go with the Edmonton Oilers. And I do agree with you, too. It's something that the league does need to have Connor McDavid playing in the playoffs. So I'm going to go with the Edmonton Oilers. All right, Predators and Coyotes.
Yeah, this is another tough one. I think I'm going to go with the Predators. Their offense hasn't been good enough. Their top players have underperformed this season. But I liked that during this pandemic, there was a story that came out where Ryan Johansson said, I got to be better. Like, I'm so disappointed. And I think that everyone's going to, on the Predators, will take stock of their performance. And, they're good enough defensively. They should have strong enough goaltending. Rennie hasn't been as sharp as we've seen him in the past. But, he knows what's up. He knows what he needs to do to be successful. So I would give them an advantage. I just don't know that the Coyotes are strong defensively, but they just don't score nearly enough goals. Like, this could be a low-scoring series.
Yeah, I have a hard time going for either one of those teams. I do like the Coyotes, and I do think Rick Tocchet is more the kind of coach that would get his team ready to play in a short series like that. But I agree with you. They just haven't shown that they can really put the puck in the net. And I just have a hard time with the Predators, with believing that they're going to, all of a sudden, now flip the switch to show that they're committed to playing that team game. So I guess you went with the Predators, right? So I'm going to have to go against you. Now, it's a toss-up for me, more because I don't like either one of these teams too much. But I'll have to take it.
Yeah.
I think this could be a good series, the Canucks and the Wild.
Yeah. The Canucks, I have a lot of respect for what they've done this season. I kept waiting for them to falter. And, like, I love the direction they're headed in. We got a lot of good young players, and Benning has done a good job of stockpiling young talent. I didn't think this season would be their season, and they've surprised me how well they played. But my fear is that they are the momentum team, the good karma team. We see one every year where they just sort of figure out how to hang in there. And I wonder if they've lost that magic during this pandemic. Meanwhile, the Minnesota Wild, I think Dean Evason, the interim coach, has come in there and kind of shown them how they need to play to be successful. Like everyone has always said, the Wild are better than they show. I think Evason has gotten them to understand how they need to play in order to be successful. They were playing very well. And I don't think the Wild were hot. I think at the end of the season, Evason showed them who they really are.
Yes. Exactly.
So I think that, they won't have lost their momentum, because I don't think that's why they were being successful. I think they understand now. So I'm going to pick the Wild, but boy, the Vancouver Canucks have shown me a lot this season, and hey, maybe they'll be able to continue. But
well, then I'll have to go with Vancouver, and I think and again, you go to their talent level. That's Peterson, right? The forward they've got there, really talented young guy, and I love the talent they have up front there. So I look at them a lot the same way I look at the Toronto Maple Leafs, and that they're going to come with that speed and attack game. And it's going to take Minnesota. I agree with you totally. I think Minnesota is now playing, or had been playing, the way they should be playing. But can they get that going right away in time in a short series like a 3 out of 5? That's the question for me. So I'll take Vancouver. The Flames and the Jets. This will be a good one.
Yeah, it is. And I had a hard time trying to decide that one. I kind of felt the Jets were playing pretty well, and they've overcome a lot. Their defense, like they had a no-name defense. They had lost a lot of defensemen, especially with a Big Buff moving on, and Myers leaving. And
Trouba.
So this is they've had to sort of do it with Mears defensively, but I've been impressed by it, and Hellebuck has done a really good job, and for that reason, I'm going to give them the advantage. I'm going to say that Winnipeg will win just based on their goaltending.
All right, so I hate agreeing with you, that, and I see your logic, and I like it with the Jets there, but I just look at Calgary, that they're a team that is similar, I guess, to where Minnesota was a while ago. I don't think Calgary has really started to play as well as their talent level should have them playing. So I'm going to have to go with the Flames, because I'm thinking to myself, well, these guys have come back, they're rested now, they're regrouped, and I think they're going to do better. I'm not totally sold on them, but just to be different than you, I'm going to have to take the Calgary Flames.
Well, would you have an easier time taking them if they had hired Gerard Gallant as coach?
Absolutely. Actually, I swear, you were reading my mind. That was in my mind. I'm thinking to myself, why have they not hired Gerard Gallant? Similar to, I saw the comments that Doug Wilson at San Jose made, saying that Bugner is not guaranteed to come back for the next season. So those 7 teams now that are out of the playoffs, they're done until whatever January or whatever until we start the 2021 season. So, I'm thinking to myself, why is Gerard Gallant still sitting there all this time, and teams have a chance to sign him? So,
well, we're running out of time, but I want for next time because I want to really get into this a little bit because I'm really curious to know what you think about this as a former player. We have never seen what we're going to see now, which is we're going to end the season, and then we're going to basically send everybody home for a couple of weeks or so, 3 weeks, and then we're going to start another season and play 82 games. And we may not start it till December or January, and then we're going to try to cram all those 82 games in so that we're not playing the following August.
Yeah.
So, that's going to be amazing. And what will that do to the bodies and to the injury rate that we're going to see?
Well, and you got different levels there too, right? So the 7 teams that are not in this playoff for right now coming up, they'll be done for 8 months they wouldn't have played. And the teams that get beat out early in this new playoff series, they're going to have a whole lot of time off too. Whereas the teams, particularly the Final Four and the Final Two, they're not going to have much of a turnaround at all. So it's going to be interesting to see how that affects the next season with those teams having no time off hardly at all, and the other teams having too much time off.
Yeah, no, and especially for the younger players on those teams that are out of it. And, it's funny, but all those teams, they're weaker teams, so they have younger players. So what's that do for their development? Yep. Anyway, you've been listening to the Laidlaw and Allen Report. I'm Alan. He's Laidlaw. We'll be back.
We'll see you next week, guys.